I was really looking forward to Magic because I really like Anthony Hopkins and I'm kind of scared of ventriloquism. So horrors about ventriloquist dummies definitely appeal to me. And while I thought Hopkins gave an amazing performance, I thought the narrative itself was for the most part kind of slow, but there were some really powerful moments. So it's not a bad film, but it's quite a long journey. The film itself is just under 2 hours, but it kind of felt longer. This was released in 1978. It's directed by Richard Attenborough. It's written by William Goldman. And of course, it stars Anthony Hopkins as Corky, and he also voices the ventriloquist dummy. And I have to say, I like the design of the dummy. Definitely very creepy. Wouldn't want to meet it in real life. And Corky is a ventriloquist, and he, with his dummy, goes to rekindle a romance with Peggy. Peggy played by Ann-Margret. And I don't want to say too much more than that. The narrative itself is very, very slow. But Corky's character is really fascinating. I really like the character, a very well-written character. Hopkins, as I said, gave a really brilliant performance. I wouldn't necessarily say it's a scary film. IMDb listed as both a psychological horror and a slasher horror. And I feel like definitely leans more into the psychological, but it's not very strong for either type. And it's not very scary. Now, granted, this was released in the 70s. I feel like if it were released today, it might be a little darker and a little bit scarier. The concept itself is quite scary, but the execution is not as terrifying as the actual concept. So if you're looking for something very scary, it's probably not going to work. But if you want something that's definitely creepy, with a really strong character with Corky and, well, an eerie ventriloquist dummy. I wasn't necessarily scared when the dummy was on screen, but I did feel uneasy. So not a terrifying film. I feel like films in the 70s were definitely, for the most part, not as scary as they are today. Certainly there are maybe a few exceptions, but one of the reasons why I don't watch a lot of older horror is because I just feel like they're not as scary because people weren't pushing as many boundaries as perhaps they are today. Audiences were not acclimatized to horror as they are today. And this one felt quite tame, but there were moments. There were moments that were maybe not scary, but a little disturbing. It's a good film. It's not a great film. I feel like we could have removed 20 minutes here and there, tidied it up a little bit, maybe made it a little scarier, even for the late 70s. But it's a fascinating concept. Corky is a fascinating character, and Hopkins gave a brilliant performance. So if there's anything about this that appeals to you, then I'd say it's worth checking out. Not amazing, but not too bad, and maybe worth a watch.